The human body does not fail in old age because something goes wrong. It fails because nothing ever went right for this length of time. For more than 99% of human history, reaching old age was rare, brief, and biologically irrelevant. Evolution did not design tissues, organs, or repair systems to remain stable for decades after reproduction ended. It only needed them to last long enough. What we call aging today is not a disease, not a malfunction, and not an error. It is the silent continuation of a design that was never updated. We are living inside bodies, shaped for a shorter story, stretched far beyond their original ending. And that raises a quiet, uncomfortable question. What happens when a species survives longer than it was ever meant to? For most of human history, a long old age was not a recognized stage of life. It was not planned for, not prepared for, and not biologically necessary. Early humans lived inside environments defined by injury, infection, unpredictable food supply, and constant physical strain. Survival was immediate and fragile. In such conditions, the measure of success was simple: live long enough to reproduce and ensure that offspring survived past early vulnerability. Anything beyond that point had little influence on which bodies passed their traits forward. Natural selection does not operate with foresight. It responds to what happens early and repeatedly, not to what might occur decades later. If a trait helps a body function well in youth and early adulthood, it is preserved, even if it carries hidden costs that appear much later. For most of evolutionary time, those later costs were rarely expressed, because few individuals lived long enough to experience them. Archaeological and anthropological evidence consistently shows that prehistoric populations contained many young individuals, fewer middle-aged adults, and very few who reached what we would now consider advanced old age. This does not mean that early humans were weak or poorly built. On the contrary, their bodies were often robust, resilient, and physically capable, but they were shaped for intensity rather than duration. Muscles, bones, and connective tissues were designed to withstand repeated stress in the short to medium term, not to remain unchanged across many decades. Energy allocation followed the same logic. Growth, reproduction, and immediate repair were prioritized over long-term maintenance. When a bone healed imperfectly, when joints accumulated wear, or when immune responses left lasting inflammation, the long-term consequences rarely mattered. The body was never required to remain flawless for 80 years. From an evolutionary perspective, a body that functioned well for 30 or 40 years was sufficient. There was no consistent pressure to refine systems that would only fail after reproduction had already ended. Aging, therefore, did not emerge as a problem to be solved. It emerged as an absence of pressure. There was no selection for durability beyond a certain point because that point was seldom reached. The human body was assembled within a short biological narrative, one that ended early and often. What we now call old age existed mostly as a statistical rarity, not as a meaningful phase of life. As a result, there was no incentive to design organs that could resist slow deterioration indefinitely. The mechanisms that keep tissues functional were built to be effective, not eternal. They were good enough for the world in which they evolved. Only much later, with the arrival of stable food systems, social cooperation, and eventually modern medicine, did human lifespans stretch far beyond that original narrative. When that happened, the limits of the design became visible. The body did not suddenly begin to fail. It simply continued along a trajectory that had never been meant to extend so far. To understand why the human body struggles with long old age, we must begin here, at a time when living just long enough was enough, and living longer carried no evolutionary meaning. When we imagine early human life, it is easy to think only about danger, hardship, and short lifespans. But what matters more for understanding the human body is not how difficult life was, but how predictable its length was. For most of our evolutionary past, life followed a narrow window. Childhood was fragile, adulthood was demanding, and survival beyond midlife was uncertain. The body learned to expect this pattern. It did not need to prepare for a long future, because a long future was not part of the environment it repeatedly encountered. Biology responds to patterns that occur again and again. Rare events do not shape design. If most individuals do not live into deep old age, then deep old age does not become a biological priority. This is why the human body feels complete in early adulthood. Strength peaks. Healing is fast. Energy is abundant. These are not coincidences. They are signs of a system reaching the point it was designed to reach. Beyond that point, there is no further optimization. There is no hidden reserve meant to support decades of slow decline. The body simply continues forward without new instructions. This helps explain why many age-related changes feel gradual rather than sudden. There is no clear switch where the body changes its strategy. It keeps operating under the same rules it learned early in life. Muscles still respond to stress, but recover more slowly. Bones still remodel, but with less precision. The immune system still reacts, but often too strongly or too weakly. None of this reflects failure. It reflects continuity. The body is still doing what it always did, only now under conditions it was never shaped to handle. In early human environments, the cost of this limitation was low. Most people did not live long enough for slow accumulation to matter. Small declines were overshadowed by immediate risks such as injury or infection. Today, those immediate risks have been reduced, but the slow processes remain. We now experience the long tail of a design that once ended earlier. This is why aging often feels uneven and confusing. Some abilities remain stable, while others quietly fade. The body was never trained to manage long-term balance. It was trained to respond, adapt, and move forward. Old age requires maintenance, patience, and stability across time. These qualities were not demanded by early environments. As a result, they were never deeply embedded into our biology. The human body is not incomplete. It is specific. It reflects the conditions under which it emerged. When we extend life far beyond those conditions, we are not breaking the body. We are revealing its boundaries. Understanding this does not make aging disappear, but it changes how we interpret it. Aging is not a betrayal by the body. It is a reminder of where the body comes from, a reminder that it was shaped for a world where reaching maturity was the main achievement, and where going far beyond it was rare enough to leave no mark on design. When we say that the human body was built for a short story, this does not mean that early humans lived careless or simple lives. It means that the body learned to solve problems that appeared quickly and repeatedly, not slowly and far in the future. In early human groups, daily life demanded constant movement, attention, and physical effort. Bodies were shaped to respond to immediate needs. Finding food, avoiding danger, healing visible injuries, and staying functional long enough to raise children. These demands trained the body to prioritize speed and strength over long-term preservation. A system that reacts fast is often more valuable than one that lasts forever. This trade-off made sense in a world where tomorrow was uncertain and survival depended on action, not planning decades ahead. Because of this, many biological systems developed with a built-in expectation of turnover. Cells divide, repair, and replace themselves, but not perfectly. Small errors accumulate, but slowly. In a short life, these errors rarely reach a critical level. The body never learned to correct them fully because it never needed to. This is especially clear when we look at how the body handles stress. Stress responses are powerful and effective in the short term. They increase energy, sharpen focus, and mobilize resources. But they also leave traces. Over time, repeated stress can wear down tissues and disrupt balance. In early environments, this cost was acceptable. The benefits of surviving a dangerous moment outweighed any distant consequence. The body was not rewarded for thinking ahead. It was rewarded for surviving now. This pattern shaped not only muscles and bones, but also hormones, immune responses, and metabolism. All of these systems were tuned to operate strongly for a limited span. None were optimized for gentle stability across many decades. When we reach what we now call old age, the body does not switch to a new mode. It continues following the same rules it learned early on. Energy is still allocated as if resources were scarce. Repair still favors speed over perfection. Inflammation still rises quickly, even when it causes long-term damage. These are not mistakes. They are habits written into biology. From this perspective, aging is not the body giving up. It is the body remaining consistent. It continues to act like a body that expects life to be shorter. The surprise is not that decline appears. The surprise is that the body performs as well as it does for as long as it does. Modern humans often feel that aging is unfair, as if the body breaks a promise it never made. But there was never a promise of lasting indefinitely. There was only a design shaped by repetition, by what worked often enough to matter. Long old age was not common enough to shape that design. When we extend life far beyond its original frame, we place the body into unfamiliar territory. It responds the only way it knows how, by continuing forward, without adjustment. Understanding this helps us see aging not as a sudden loss, but as the long echo of an earlier world, a world where living long was rare, and living just long enough was the goal. At the center of human aging lies a simple but uncomfortable truth. Once the body has passed the point of reproduction, evolution largely stops paying attention. This does not mean that life after reproduction has no meaning. It means that biology is shaped by what increases the chance of genes continuing, not by what makes later life easier. For most of human history, having children and helping them survive through early years was the primary biological task. After that task was completed, the future of the body mattered far less in evolutionary terms. Natural selection is not guided by fairness or foresight. It responds to patterns that repeat often enough to shape outcomes. If a trait causes harm only after reproduction has ended, that harm is mostly invisible to selection. The body can carry weaknesses that appear late, as long as those weaknesses do not interfere with early survival or reproduction. This is why many age-related problems are not dramatic failures, but slow declines. There was no strong pressure to eliminate them. The body was never rewarded for staying perfect indefinitely. It was rewarded for being effective early. This principle helps explain why so many systems in the human body seem generous in youth but limited later on. Repair mechanisms work quickly when we are young, but they do not aim for perfection. They aim for function. A wound closes, even if the tissue is not exactly the same as before. An immune response clears a threat, even if it leaves lasting inflammation. These outcomes are acceptable in a world where the future is uncertain and survival today matters most. Over time, the costs of these shortcuts accumulate, but because those costs appear late, they were rarely removed from the design. In early human groups, individuals who carried such late-life costs often had already passed on their genes. Their bodies had done what evolution required of them. There was no consistent advantage in preventing slow decline decades later. This logic applies across many aspects of aging. Joints wear down because they were built to move efficiently, not endlessly. Blood vessels stiffen because flexibility was optimized for early performance, not lifelong stability. Even the brain follows this pattern. It develops rapidly early in life, reaches peak function, and then slowly loses resilience. None of these changes reflect neglect. They reflect prioritization. Evolution focused on what mattered most often. Long old age was rare, and therefore it was not refined. When we look at aging through this lens, it becomes clear why the body feels unprepared for long later life. It was never shaped to manage decades beyond its main task. This does not mean that aging is meaningless or that later life has no value. It means that value and design are not the same thing. Culture can give meaning where biology did not give structure. The body simply follows the rules under which it was built. It does not resist aging because there was no reason for it to learn how. What we experience as decline is not the body failing its duty. It is the body completing it, and then continuing on without further guidance. Understanding this helps remove blame from the body. It allows us to see aging not as a personal failure, but as a biological consequence of priorities set long ago. To understand why evolution steps back after reproduction, it helps to look at how energy is used inside the body. Energy is always limited. Every organism must decide, through its biology, where that energy goes. In humans, most energy in early life is directed toward growth, learning, movement, and reproduction. These are the phases where success or failure has the greatest impact on whether genes continue. The body invests heavily during these years because the return is high. Strong muscles, sharp senses, and fast healing increase the chance of survival and reproduction. After this phase, the return changes. Maintaining the body perfectly for many decades requires enormous energy, but offers little benefit to genetic continuation. Because of this imbalance, evolution favored strategies that spend energy early rather than save it for later. The body does not hold back resources for a distant future. It uses them when they matter most. This explains why many protective systems feel generous in youth and restrictive later on. Early in life, cells divide rapidly, tissues regenerate efficiently, and damage is corrected quickly. But these processes are not designed to last forever. They are costly, and over time they slow down. The body begins to conserve energy, even though we may still expect it to perform at the same level. This shift is not a conscious decision. It is a pattern shaped by millions of years of selection. In early human environments, conserving energy later in life made sense. Food was uncertain, physical effort was constant. A body that burned resources endlessly would not survive long enough to reproduce. As a result, systems that reduced maintenance over time were not removed. They worked well enough for the conditions that mattered. Aging appears when this long-term conservation becomes visible. Repair still happens, but more slowly. Immune responses still function, but with less precision. Hormones still regulate the body, but with weaker signals. These changes are often described as decline, but they can also be understood as reallocation. The body is not shutting down. End quote. It is spending less. This becomes especially clear when we consider trade-offs. A strong inflammatory response can save a life early on, even if it damages tissues later. Rapid cell division can heal wounds quickly, even if it increases long-term instability. Evolution accepted these trade-offs because the benefits came first and the costs came late. In a world where most individuals did not live long enough to experience those costs, the balance favored early strength. Today, we live long enough to see the full price of that strategy. What feels like the body giving less is actually the body following the same rules it always followed. It continues to prioritize immediate function over distant perfection. Understanding aging in this way helps explain why no single system collapses all at once. Instead, many small shifts occur across time. The body gradually moves from a state of active investment to one of careful maintenance. It was never designed to do more than that. Long old age exposes this limit not because something is wrong, but because something has finally been extended far beyond its original frame. There is another reason why evolution allows decline after reproduction, and it is closely tied to traits that are helpful early but harmful later. Many features of the human body bring clear advantages in youth, even if they carry hidden costs that appear much later in life. Evolution does not separate these effects. If a trait helps survival and reproduction early on, it is likely to be kept, even if it slowly causes problems in old age. The body accepts this exchange without hesitation. Strong growth signals, for example, help the body develop quickly and heal efficiently in early life. They support strength, fertility, and recovery. But the same signals can later contribute to wear, imbalance, and loss of control in tissues. From an evolutionary point of view, this is acceptable. The benefit arrives early, when it matters most. The cost arrives late, when selection no longer strongly applies. This pattern appears across many systems in the body. Inflammation is another clear example. A fast and powerful inflammatory response can save a life by fighting infection or repairing injury. In early human environments, this response increased the chance of surviving dangerous situations. But inflammation is not precise. It can damage surrounding tissues and leave lasting changes. Over many years, repeated inflammation contributes to stiffness, pain, and decline. Evolution allowed this because the early benefit outweighed the later cost. The body was never asked to choose comfort in old age over survival in youth. The same logic applies to stress hormones. These chemicals help mobilize energy, sharpen attention, and prepare the body for action. They are extremely useful when danger is present, but when activated repeatedly over a long life, they strain the heart, weaken tissues, and disturb balance. Early humans benefited from this system without paying its full price. Because few lived long enough to do so, modern humans now experience both sides of the exchange. We gain the early strength and also endure the long-term cost. This reveals an important truth about aging. Many of the processes that trouble us later are not accidents. They are side effects of systems that once worked very well. Aging is not caused by weak design, but by successful design applied beyond its original time frame. The body does not know which parts of its biology will be useful only early and which will cause trouble later. It carries them together as a package. Once reproduction has occurred, there is no mechanism to remove the later harm without also removing the early benefit. Evolution cannot fine-tune for a future that rarely existed. This helps explain why there is no single cause of aging that can simply be switched off. Aging emerges from many traits doing exactly what they were shaped to do. When we live long enough, the balance shifts, and the hidden costs become visible. Understanding this removes the idea that the body has turned against us. It has not changed sides. It is still following the same priorities it always followed. Aging is the delayed shadow of early success, stretching across time in a body that was never redesigned for such length. Many of the traits that helped early humans survive came with hidden costs that only appeared much later. These traits were not mistakes. They were solutions to urgent problems. In a dangerous and uncertain world, the body learned to favor responses that worked quickly, even if they were rough and imperfect. One of the clearest examples of this is the way the body reacts to threat and injury. Early human survival depended on fast action. A slow response could mean death. As a result, the body developed systems that could mobilize energy, sharpen focus, and trigger repair almost immediately. These systems saved lives again and again, but they were never designed to be gentle. Speed mattered more than precision. When danger passed, the body did not fully reset. Small changes remained. In a short life, these leftovers rarely cause trouble. Over a long life, they accumulate. The immune system offers another clear example. A strong immune response helped early humans survive infections that could otherwise be fatal. Fever, inflammation, and aggressive defense mechanisms were powerful tools. But these tools were blunt. They did not distinguish perfectly between harmful invaders and the body's own tissues. In youth, the benefit was clear. In old age, the cost becomes visible. Chronic inflammation slowly damages joints, blood vessels, and organs. Yet this outcome was not selected against because it appeared long after reproduction. The same pattern appears in how the body uses energy. Early humans needed to be efficient and adaptable. When food was available, the body stored energy. When food was scarce, it conserved. This flexibility helped people survive changing conditions. But it also created systems that prioritized storage and rapid response over long-term balance. Over time, these priorities constrained metabolism and circulation. Again, this was not a flaw. It was a strategy suited to a world where tomorrow was uncertain and longevity was rare. Even the structure of bones and joints reflects this logic. They were built to handle heavy use early in life, carrying loads, running long distances, and absorbing impact. Wear accumulated, but it mattered little if life was short. There was no reason to engineer joints that would remain smooth and stable for many decades. The body was rewarded for strength, not endurance across time. When we reach old age today, we experience the long-term consequences of these early advantages. Pain, stiffness, and fatigue feel like failures, but they are better understood as delayed costs. The body is not breaking down because it is weak. It is breaking down because it was strong in the ways that mattered most early on. This shift in perspective changes how we interpret aging. Instead of seeing decline as something that went wrong, we can see it as something that was never prevented because it did not need to be. The human body carries the memory of its original challenges. And number 5, it still behaves as if survival depends on quick action and immediate repair. Long-term comfort was never the goal. When life extends far beyond those original demands, the old strategies remain. They do not adapt easily to a slower, longer existence. Aging emerges at the point where early survival strategies meet a life that lasts far longer than expected. This is the quiet cost of being shaped by urgency. The body remembers a world that no longer exists, and it continues to act as if that world still defines its future. Another hidden cost of early survival appears in the way the human body handles repair. In dangerous environments, repair needed to be fast, not perfect. A broken bone that healed quickly, even if slightly misaligned, was better than a bone that healed slowly and left the body vulnerable. A wound that closed rapidly, even with scar tissue, reduced the risk of infection. Speed saved lives. precision was secondary. This approach shaped how human tissues learned to rebuild themselves. Repair systems became efficient at restoring basic function, not at preserving original structure forever. In a short life, this difference was small. Over a long life, it becomes visible. Scars accumulate, joints lose smooth movement, and tissues become less flexible. These changes feel like decline, but they are the natural outcome of a system that was trained to act quickly rather than carefully. The same logic applies to how the body replaces cells. Cells are constantly renewed, but the process is not exact. Small imperfections slip through. Early on, the body can manage these errors because overall function remains strong. Over time, errors slowly accumulate. In early human populations, this accumulation rarely reached a level that mattered. Life usually ended before long-term instability became a problem. There was no pressure to design systems that could maintain perfect order for many decades. The body learned to accept a certain amount of disorder as long as it did not interfere with early survival. This acceptance of imperfection is not a flaw. It is an adaptation to urgency. The body does not pause to check whether each repair will remain stable far into the future. It responds to what is needed now. Even the way pain is processed reflects this priority. Pain signals danger and forces immediate action. They encourage rest, avoidance, or caution. But pain systems are not subtle. They can remain active long after the original threat has passed. In early life, this ensured protection. In later life, it can lead to chronic discomfort. Again, evolution allowed this, because the early benefit was clear and the later cost was delayed. The body was rewarded for warning early, not for remaining silent later. Over a long lifespan, these small decisions add up. Repair that favors speed over quality, renewal that tolerates error, and warning systems that err on the side of caution slowly reshape the body. None of these processes were designed to reverse themselves completely. They move in one direction. In early environments, that direction rarely extended far enough to cause serious trouble. In modern life, it does. This helps explain why aging feels uneven. Some parts of the body seem to hold up well, while others decline steadily. Each system follows its own version of the same rule. Respond quickly, fix enough, move on. When life stretches far beyond the original frame, the long-term consequences become clear. Aging, then, is not caused by a single breakdown. It is the gradual result of many small repairs that were never meant to last forever. The body does not fail because it repairs poorly. It fails because it repairs exactly as it was taught to do, in a world where time was short and survival came first. There is one more quiet cost of early survival that often goes unnoticed, and it lies in how the human body learns habits rather than plans. The body does not think ahead. It repeats what has worked before. In early human life, repeating successful responses was essential. If a certain way of moving avoided injury, it was repeated. If a certain stress response helped escape danger, it became familiar. Over time, these repeated responses turned into stable patterns. The body learned to rely on them without questioning whether they would remain helpful far into the future. Habits are efficient. They reduce the need for constant adjustment. In a short and dangerous life, this efficiency was valuable. The body did not need flexibility across many decades. It needed reliability in the present. As a result, many systems became resistant to change once established. This resistance helped maintain stability early on, but it also limited adaptation later. When conditions changed, the body often continued following old rules. This can be seen in posture, movement, and even breathing. Early humans moved frequently, carried loads, and changed positions often. The body adapted to these demands. But when movement patterns became less varied, or when injuries altered behavior, the body adjusted and then stayed there. It did not expect to maintain perfect alignment for a lifetime. Small shifts became permanent. Over decades, these shifts contributed to stiffness and imbalance. The body was not correcting itself toward an ideal future state. It was maintaining what felt familiar. The same principle applies to internal systems. Hormone rhythms, stress responses, and sleep patterns settle into routines shaped early in life. These routines are efficient, but they are not endlessly flexible. When life extends and conditions change, the body often struggles to update them. It continues to behave as if the old environment still exists. This is why aging can feel like being trapped in patterns that no longer serve us. The body is not refusing to adapt. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do: conserve energy by repeating known solutions. In early environments, this strategy worked well. The future rarely lasted long enough for outdated habits to cause harm. In modern life, the long horizon reveals their limits. The body carries forward responses shaped by youth into decades they were never meant to support. This creates a sense of gradual mismatch. Movements become less efficient. Recovery slows. Balance feels harder to maintain. None of this happens suddenly. It unfolds slowly as the distance grows between the body's learned habits and the demands of long life. Aging, in this sense, is not only about wear and damage, it is also about repetition without renewal. The body remembers what once kept it alive and continues to rely on it. It does not naturally redesign itself for a future that was never part of its training. When we reach old age, we are living inside a body shaped by habits formed under very different expectations. The body is not outdated by accident. It is faithful to its past. It carries forward solutions that once mattered deeply, even when they no longer fit the length of life we now experience. This loyalty to earlier survival is one more reason why the human body struggles with long old age. It was built to repeat, not to reinvent itself endlessly. The human body is often described as having repair systems that protect it from damage. This is true, but it is only part of the story. These repair systems were never designed to work forever. They were designed to work well enough, for long enough. In early human life, most damage came from visible sources: cuts, fractures, infections, and physical strain. Repair needed to happen quickly to restore basic function and reduce immediate risk. A body that repaired fast survived. A body that repaired slowly did not. Because of this, the systems responsible for repair were shaped to prioritize speed and practicality over long-term stability. When tissues were damaged, the goal was to close the gap, restore movement, and continue living. Perfect restoration was not required. The body accepted small imperfections as an acceptable cost. In a short life, these imperfections rarely accumulated into serious problems. Over a long life, they do. This is where the limits of repair become visible. The body does not store an unlimited reserve of repair capacity. Each system has a range within which it can operate effectively. Early in life, repair systems are strong and responsive. As time passes, they become less precise and slower to activate. This is not because the body is failing. It is because the body was never designed to maintain peak repair indefinitely. There was no evolutionary reward for doing so. Once reproduction was achieved and offspring survival was supported, maintaining flawless tissues for decades offered little advantage. As a result, repair systems were allowed to decline gradually without being removed by selection. This pattern can be seen throughout the body. Skin heals more slowly and with more scarring. Muscles recover with greater stiffness. Blood vessels repair themselves less efficiently. These changes are often described as deterioration, but they follow a consistent logic. Repair continues, but it does not aim for renewal. It aims for continuation. The body keeps things working, not pristine. In early environments, this strategy was effective. It kept people alive through repeated challenges. The future was uncertain, so the body invested in immediate recovery rather than long-term preservation. There was no reason to expect that the same tissues would need to perform flawlessly for 70 or 80 years. When modern humans reach old age, they encounter a body still operating under these old assumptions. The repair systems continue to function, but within limits that were never meant to support such long use. This is why aging often feels like gradual erosion rather than sudden collapse. The body is not breaking. It is wearing. It is following a repair strategy that assumed time would run out sooner. Understanding this helps explain why there is no simple way to restore the body to its earlier state. The repair systems do not contain instructions for complete renewal. They contain instructions for survival. Long old age exposes this difference. The body does not stop repairing itself. It simply cannot repair itself back to how it once was. This is not a defect. It is a reflection of the world in which those systems evolved. The human body was built to be resilient in the short term, not indestructible across time. When life extends far beyond the original expectations, repair continues, but the gap between damage and restoration slowly widens. Aging emerges in that widening space, not as a failure of repair, but as the natural limit of a system that was never meant to run without end. Another limit of the body's repair systems appears in how they are organized over time. Repair does not happen all at once, and it does not happen equally everywhere. The body repairs what is most urgent first. It focuses on keeping essential functions running rather than restoring every structure to its original state. In early human life, this strategy worked well. If a person could walk, hunt, breathe, and escape danger, then repair had done its job. Fine details did not matter. Slight stiffness in a joint, reduced flexibility in a tendon, or subtle weakness in a muscle did not threaten survival. These small losses were acceptable because the body was not expected to last very long. Over a long life, however, this prioritization creates imbalance. Systems that are critical for immediate survival receive attention again and again, while less urgent structures slowly fall behind. Repair becomes selective. The body does not collapse, but it does not renew evenly either. This unevenness is one reason why aging rarely feels symmetrical. One joint may ache while another remains strong. One sense may fade while others stay sharp. The repair system is not failing randomly. It is following a hierarchy shaped by early survival needs. This hierarchy favors function over comfort and movement over refinement. Another important aspect of repair is that it is reactive, not preventative. The body waits for damage to occur before responding. In early environments, preventative maintenance would have been inefficient. Resources were limited, and spending energy to prevent damage that might never occur offered little advantage. It was better to respond quickly when damage happened. As a result, repair systems evolved to activate after injury, not before it. Over decades, this approach allows small stresses to accumulate unnoticed. Tiny strains, repeated impacts, and low-level inflammation slowly alter tissues. Because none of these changes are immediately dangerous, they do not trigger strong repair responses. The body tolerates them. In a short life, tolerance was harmless. In a long life, tolerance becomes costly. This helps explain why aging often feels like slow drift rather than sharp decline. The body adjusts to damage instead of eliminating it. It compensates rather than restores. Muscles adapt to reduce strength by changing movement patterns. Joints adapt to wear by limiting range of motion. The nervous system adapts to slower signals by simplifying responses. These adaptations keep the body functional, but they also lock in limitations. Repair gives way to accommodation. The body learns to live with damage rather than remove it completely. This is not a sign of neglect. It is a strategy shaped by necessity. Early humans benefited from a body that could adapt quickly to injury and continue functioning. There was no expectation that the same body would need to perform smoothly for many decades. When modern humans live long lives, they experience the long-term consequences of this strategy. The repair systems continue to work, but they do so by managing decline rather than reversing it. Aging, in this sense, is not a sudden loss of repair, but a gradual shift in how repair is used. The body does not stop caring. It simply continues to care in the way it always has, prioritizing survival in the present over perfection in the future. The final limit of the body's repair systems lies in something very simple. They were never meant to restore the body to its original state. Repair, in the human body, is not the same as renewal. Renewal would mean returning tissues to how they were before damage occurred. Repair means making the body usable again. This difference is subtle but important. In early human life, usefulness mattered far more than perfection. A repaired body that could still move, work, and survive was enough. There was no advantage in restoring every structure exactly as it once was. Because of this, repair systems evolved with a one-directional bias. They move forward, not backward. Once tissue changes, the body adapts to that change instead of erasing it. Over time, these adaptations accumulate. Each repair leaves a small trace. Scar tissue replaces flexible tissue. Stiffness replaces smooth motion. Slight weakness replaces full strength. None of these changes are dramatic on their own. They become noticeable only when many years have passed. In early human environments, this accumulation rarely reached a level that caused concern. Life usually ended before the long chain of small repairs became heavy. The body was never under pressure to solve this problem. There was no repeated pattern of individuals living long enough for imperfect repair to threaten survival or reproduction. As a result, no system evolved to reverse accumulated damage completely. The body learned to adjust, not to erase. This explains why aging often feels irreversible. Exercise, rest, and care can slow decline and improve function, but they rarely return the body fully to its earlier state. The repair systems do not contain instructions for full restoration. They contain instructions for coping. This coping is intelligent and adaptive. It allows people to continue functioning despite damage, but it also locks in change. Each adjustment narrows the range of future movement and flexibility. The body becomes more stable, but also more limited. This trade-off made sense in a world where stability meant survival. In modern life, it reveals its cost. The longer the body exists, the more it carries the weight of its own history. Every injury, strain, and adaptation leaves a mark. Aging is the visible record of those marks. It is not caused by one failure, but by many successful repairs that were never undone. The body is not neglecting itself. It is following a repair strategy that assumes time is limited. When time extends far beyond that assumption, the limits of repair become clear. The body continues to function, but with increasing constraint. This does not mean that repair has stopped. It means that repair has reached the boundary of what it was designed to do. Long old age does not break the repair system. It exposes it. It reveals that the human body was built to endure challenges, not to erase their traces across a lifetime. Understanding this helps us see aging not as a loss of care, but as the natural outcome of a system that was always meant to move forward, never back. Aging does not begin with collapse. It begins with drift. The human body rarely breaks all at once. Instead, it slowly moves away from the balance it once held. This movement is subtle and often unnoticed at first. In early adulthood, many systems in the body work together smoothly. Muscles respond quickly. Blood flows easily. Signals travel efficiently. The body stays close to a stable center, but as time passes, small changes begin to accumulate. These changes do not announce themselves as failures. They appear as slight delays, minor stiffness, or reduced tolerance. Each change on its own seems insignificant. Together, they shift the body's internal balance. This is what makes aging feel gradual rather than sudden. There is no clear moment when the body stops working as it should. It simply becomes harder to return to its earlier state. This drift happens because the body does not actively preserve balance forever. Balance is maintained through constant adjustment, and adjustment requires energy. In early life, energy is abundant and easily directed toward keeping systems aligned. Later, energy becomes more limited and more carefully allocated. The body continues to function, but with less margin for correction. Small imbalances that would once have been corrected quickly are now tolerated. Over time, tolerance becomes the norm. This does not reflect neglect. It reflects prioritization. The body still responds to immediate needs, but it invests less in fine-tuning. As a result, systems begin to operate slightly out of sync. The heart may still pump effectively, but vessels may lose flexibility. Muscles may still generate force, but coordination may decline. The nervous system may still process information, but signals may slow. None of these changes stop life. They simply alter how the body maintains itself. In early human environments, this gradual drift had little impact. Most lives ended before balance was tested for long periods. Modern life extends far beyond that point. We now live long enough to experience what happens when small imbalances persist. The body adapts to these shifts rather than correcting them fully. Adaptation keeps function possible, but it also stabilizes the new altered state. Once this happens, returning to the original balance becomes difficult. Aging, in this sense, is not the body falling apart. It is the body settling into a new equilibrium that is less flexible and less resilient. This new balance can support life, but it cannot support the same range of performance. The body is still organized. It is still coherent, but it operates closer to its limits. Understanding aging as drift rather than breakdown changes how we interpret later life. It reveals that decline does not come from a single cause, but from the slow movement away from a state the body once held easily. The body does not resist this movement because it was never designed to hold one perfect balance forever. It was designed to adapt as conditions changed, not to preserve a youthful state indefinitely. Long old age exposes this truth. The body continues to function, but it does so along a path that gradually moves away from its original center. As the body drifts away from its earlier balance, it does not do so evenly. Some systems adjust more easily, while others resist change. This uneven adjustment is one of the main reasons aging feels unpredictable. The body is not losing control. It is managing change with limited resources. In early life, when energy is abundant, the body can correct small deviations quickly. A night of poor sleep is followed by recovery. A minor injury heals without lasting impact. Signals return to normal. As time passes, this margin narrows. The body still corrects, but more slowly and less completely. Small disruptions linger. When they repeat, they become part of the body's new normal. This is how drift becomes established. The body does not collapse into disorder. It settles into patterns that are slightly less efficient but more stable. Stability becomes more important than optimization. This shift reflects the body's long-standing strategy. It prefers states that require less constant adjustment. In early human environments, conserving energy by accepting small inefficiencies made sense. Life was demanding, and energy spent on fine-tuning could not be used for survival. Over a long lifespan, however, these accepted inefficiencies accumulate. Coordination declines not because the nervous system stops working, but because it simplifies responses. Muscles stiffen not because they lose all function, but because flexibility requires active maintenance. Blood pressure rises not because control is lost, but because vessels adapt to stress by becoming less elastic. Each of these changes represents an attempt to maintain function with less effort. The body chooses the path of least resistance. Over time, this path leads away from youthful balance. Importantly, this process is not driven by damage alone. It is driven by adjustment. The body constantly reshapes itself to meet current demands. When demands shift towards stability and energy conservation, the shape of the system changes. The body becomes more predictable, but also less adaptable. This explains why aging often feels like losing options rather than losing function. Many abilities remain, but the range within which they operate becomes narrower. The body still works, but it does not tolerate extremes well. In early life, the body could move quickly between states. It could recover from stress, adapt to change, and return to balance. Later in life, transitions become slower and sometimes incomplete. The body prefers to stay where it is rather than invest energy in returning to an earlier state. This preference is not conscious. It is the outcome of a system designed to survive uncertainty, not to preserve youth. In early environments, returning to perfect balance offered little advantage. Continuing to function, even imperfectly, was enough. This logic remains embedded in the body. Long old age reveals it. The body is not failing to correct itself. It is choosing not to spend energy on corrections that were never required before. Aging, seen this way, is not a loss of order. It is a shift toward a different kind of order, one that values stability over flexibility and consistency over range. The body adapts to a long life by becoming more settled, not more refined. This adaptation allows survival, but it also marks the quiet movement away from the balance that once came easily. As biological drift continues, the most important change is not what the body loses, but how it responds to loss. Early in life, the body treats imbalance as a temporary problem. It expects recovery. When strength drops, it rebuilds. When rhythm is disrupted, it restores order. This expectation is built into the way systems communicate with each other. Over time, that expectation quietly changes. The body begins to assume that certain losses will remain. Instead of restoring what was, it reorganizes around what is. This shift marks a deep turning point in aging. The body moves from correction to accommodation. Accommodation is not failure. It is an intelligent response to limited capacity. When full restoration becomes costly or uncertain, the body chooses a different strategy. It simplifies. It narrows the range of movement. It reduces variability. These changes make the system easier to manage, even if they reduce performance. This is why aging often feels like becoming more constrained rather than completely impaired. Many functions remain intact, but they operate within tighter boundaries. The body learns which states are safe and which are risky. It avoids extremes. It favors predictability. This tendency reflects a long history of survival under pressure. In early human environments, unpredictability was dangerous. A body that stayed within familiar limits was less likely to fail suddenly. As a result, systems evolved to favor steady operation over exploration. In youth, exploration was possible because recovery was fast. In later life, the cost of exploration rises. The body responds by settling. It chooses states that require less adjustment. Over time, these choices shape posture, movement, circulation, and even thought patterns. The body becomes quieter, slower, and more conservative. This conservatism is not imposed by damage alone. It is chosen by the system as a whole. The body is not being pushed downhill by age. It is stepping carefully along a narrower path. This explains why aging feels different for different people. Drift does not follow a single route. Each body settles into its own pattern based on early history, repeated stresses, and accumulated adaptations. Some settle into stiffness, others into fatigue, others into slowness. The common thread is not decline, but reduced flexibility. The body still works. It simply works within limits it has learned to trust. Understanding this reframes aging. It is not a steady loss of ability, but a steady reduction in willingness to change. The body protects itself by becoming less adventurous. In a short life, this would have mattered little. In a long life, it defines the experience of old age. We live inside bodies that have slowly chosen safety over possibility. They are not broken. They are cautious. They remember a world where caution meant survival. Aging is the long expression of that memory. It is the body's way of remaining intact by letting go of range. Drift reaches its final form not when systems fail, but when they settle. The body does not collapse. It comes to rest in a shape that can last, even if it cannot do everything it once could. When we compare the human body to modern life, a quiet mismatch becomes clear. The body we live in today was shaped in a world that no longer exists. For most of human history, daily life involved movement, scarcity, and constant adaptation to changing conditions. Food was unpredictable. Physical effort was unavoidable. Rest came when it could, not when it was scheduled. The body adapted to this rhythm. It learned to respond to challenge, recover briefly, and then respond again. This pattern shaped how muscles, metabolism, hormones, and even attention developed. The body was not designed for long periods of comfort or inactivity. It was designed for fluctuation. In early environments, this fluctuation kept systems engaged and responsive. In modern life, the pattern has changed. Many challenges have been removed or softened. Food is abundant. Movement is optional. Safety is largely external. The body still follows its ancient rules, but the environment no longer provides the signals those rules expect. This creates strain that does not feel dramatic, but persistent. Systems that once adjusted through regular use now drift without clear correction. Muscles weaken not because they are damaged, but because they are underused. Metabolic systems struggle not because they are broken, but because constant availability replaces natural cycles of scarcity. The body waits for demands that rarely arrive. Over time, this waiting alters balance. The mismatch becomes more visible as life extends. The longer the body exists in an environment it was not shaped for, the more its limitations appear. This is not a moral failure of modern life, nor a flaw in the body. It is a gap between design and context. The human body evolved to solve immediate physical problems. Modern life solves many of those problems in advance. As a result, the body is left managing conditions it did not train for: long-term stillness, continuous intake, and extended lifespans. These conditions expose weaknesses that were irrelevant before. In early human life, inactivity often meant danger. Today, it is common. The body responds by conserving energy, slowing systems, and settling into patterns that feel heavy and resistant. This response made sense in the past. In a world of uncertainty, conserving energy increased survival. In a world of abundance, it leads to gradual imbalance. Aging intensifies this mismatch. As repair slows and drift increases, the body becomes less able to adapt to conditions that differ from its original expectations. Modern environments ask the body to remain stable for decades without the fluctuations that once maintained it. The body complies as best it can, but the cost appears as stiffness, fatigue, and loss of resilience. Long old age magnifies this gap. We are not only living longer than our bodies were designed for, we are living longer in conditions they were never designed to handle. Aging, in this sense, is not just about time passing. It is about time passing in an unfamiliar world. The human body carries a design that assumes movement, challenge, and change. When those elements fade, the design does not update. It continues to operate under old assumptions. The result is not immediate breakdown, but slow misalignment. Understanding this helps explain why modern aging feels different from anything that came before. We are extending life without restoring the environment that shaped the body. The longer this continues, the more clearly the mismatch appears. The mismatch between the human body and modern life becomes clearer when we look at how time itself is experienced by the body. The body was shaped in a world where days were structured by light, darkness, hunger, and movement. Activity rose with the sun and faded with night. Rest was earned through fatigue, not scheduled by clocks. This rhythm trained the body to alternate naturally between effort and recovery. Hormones followed this pattern. Energy rose and fell. Repair happened in short windows, then paused. Over a long life lived inside this rhythm, balance could be maintained. Modern life quietly disrupts this structure. Light is constant. Food is always available. Activity is often detached from physical necessity. The body still expects cycles, but the signals are blurred. When cycles weaken, regulation becomes harder. The body does not know when to push and when to rest. It responds by flattening its rhythms. Energy levels become less distinct. Recovery becomes incomplete. Over time, this flattening contributes to fatigue, stiffness, and reduced resilience. These are not signs of damage. They are signs of confusion. The body is trying to adapt to an environment that no longer speaks its original language. This confusion grows with age. Younger bodies can tolerate blurred signals because repair is fast and reserves are high. Older bodies rely more on clear rhythms to maintain balance. When those rhythms are absent, drift accelerates. Sleep becomes lighter, recovery takes longer. Systems fall out of sync. The body adapts by lowering expectations. It reduces output to avoid failure. This adaptation protects survival, but it also limits vitality. In early human life, this situation rarely occurred. The environment enforced rhythm automatically. Darkness demanded rest. Hunger demanded movement. Weather demanded adaptation. The body did not need to interpret complex signals. It responded directly to the world around it. In modern life, many of these signals are replaced by artificial cues. Screens replace sunsets. Schedules replace fatigue. Convenience replaces necessity. The body tries to adjust, but it was never designed to regulate itself in isolation from the environment. Over decades, this separation takes a toll. Aging reveals the cost because aging reduces flexibility. The older the body becomes, the more it depends on external structure to maintain internal balance. When that structure is weak or inconsistent, imbalance deepens. This does not mean modern life is harmful by intention. It means it removes the natural guidance systems that once kept the body aligned. The body compensates by becoming more conservative. It limits activity, narrows rhythms, and reduces responsiveness. These changes feel like decline, but they are protective adjustments. The body is choosing safety in an environment it does not fully understand. Long old age amplifies this effect. The longer the body exists without clear environmental cues, the more it settles into low energy stability. This stability supports survival, but it does not support vitality. Understanding this helps explain why aging today often feels heavier than expected. We are not only living longer, we are living longer without the rhythms that once shaped and supported the body. The body is not resisting modern life. It is adapting to it as best it can, even if that adaptation leads to slower movement, weaker recovery, and reduced flexibility. Aging, in this context, is not simply the passage of time. It is the long-term result of a body trying to maintain balance in a world that no longer provides the signals it was built to follow. As the mismatch between the human body and modern life deepens, one pattern becomes especially clear. The body adapts by narrowing its world. When signals are unclear and demands feel constant, the body reduces its range of response. It does not seek expansion, it seeks safety. In early human environments, safety came from awareness, movement, and responsiveness. In modern environments, safety comes from conservation. The body protects itself by slowing down, limiting extremes, and avoiding rapid shifts. This strategy helps prevent sudden failure, but it also reduces resilience over time. Gradually, the body becomes less willing to respond to challenge, even mild challenge. This change is subtle. It does not feel like weakness at first. It feels like caution taking hold. As caution grows, predictability begins to replace engagement. Muscles tighten to stabilize joints and reduce uncertainty. Breathing becomes shallower to lower effort and control rhythm. The nervous system favors familiar patterns over new ones, because familiarity requires less adjustment. These shifts keep the body functioning within known limits. They are not signs of collapse. They are signs of self-protection. In early life, the cost of exploration was low. Recovery was fast. The body could afford to take risks, test limits, and return to balance. In later life, recovery slows and uncertainty carries a higher cost. A small mistake can linger. The body responds by narrowing its options. This narrowing is often mistaken for decline, but it is better understood as strategy. The body is not losing control. It is choosing stability in an environment that no longer offers clear guidance. Modern life asks the body to remain available at all times. Work, information, and stimulation rarely pause. They do not follow natural boundaries of light, fatigue, or season. The body answers by reducing sensitivity. It dampens signals to avoid overload. This dampening protects the system, but it also flattens experience. Energy feels lower, motivation feels weaker, response feels delayed. These changes reflect adaptation, not failure. Over decades, this strategy reshapes aging. Old age becomes less about visible damage and more about restricted engagement. The body still has capacity, but it uses that capacity cautiously. It avoids spending energy unless the situation feels necessary or safe. This behavior made sense in the past, when energy was precious and risk was real. In modern life, the same behavior can feel like loss, yet it remains consistent with the body's original logic. The human body was never designed to live long in a state of constant stimulation without clear cycles of effort and rest. When forced into that state, it adapts by withdrawing. Aging, then, is not only the story of time passing, it is the story of a body slowly stepping back from a world that no longer fits its expectations. Long old age magnifies this retreat. The body does not collapse under modern life. It retreats into patterns that feel safer and more manageable. This retreat keeps the body intact, but it also defines aging as narrowing rather than breaking. What we often call decline is, in many cases, the body protecting itself from a world that has become too continuous, too demanding, and too unfamiliar for the design it carries. This perspective allows aging to be seen with clarity rather than fear, as an understandable response shaped by history, environment, and time, not as a sudden failure of will, effort, or care. Old age reveals differences that were always present, but rarely noticed. Not every part of the human body was built with the same priorities. Some systems were shaped to remain stable for longer, while others were meant to perform intensely and then give way. This uneven design becomes clearer as life stretches far beyond its original frame. Aging does not affect the body evenly, because the body was never built as a single uniform machine. It is a collection of systems, each with its own history, function, and limit. In early human life, these differences mattered little. Survival depended on overall capability, not on the long-term balance of every component. As a result, some systems received more evolutionary attention than others. Systems tied closely to immediate survival were favored. Those linked to distant stability were largely ignored. This difference shapes how aging appears in different parts of the body. Muscles, for example, were designed to produce strength and movement early and often. They respond quickly to use, grow with demand, and weaken when demand fades. In a short life, this responsiveness was ideal. Over a long life, it leads to gradual loss when use becomes inconsistent. Bones tell a similar story. They are strong, adaptable, and responsive to stress, but they remodel slowly and imperfectly. Early strength mattered more than long-term smoothness. Joints were built to move under load, not to remain frictionless for decades. As time extends, these priorities become visible as stiffness and wear. The nervous system follows the same logic. It develops rapidly, reaches peak efficiency early, and then slowly loses flexibility. This is not decline by accident, but design meeting duration. In early environments, maintaining sharp function for decades was unnecessary. The brain needed to learn quickly, respond well, and support survival and reproduction. After that, stability was optional. When we live long enough, optional systems reveal their limits. Some decline earlier because they were never reinforced for endurance. Others last longer because they were repeatedly used and protected. Aging, therefore, appears uneven, confusing, and personal. This unevenness is not randomness. It is the map of evolutionary priorities made visible over time. Long old age turns these priorities into lived experience. We feel the limits of systems that were never meant to last so long. Understanding this helps explain why aging does not follow a single pattern. Each body reveals a different arrangement of strengths and weaknesses. The design was never equal across systems, and time exposes that truth. What feels like selective decline is simply selective design carried forward. The body does not age as a whole, but as many parts aging at different speeds. Long life makes those differences impossible to ignore. In earlier times, life ended before the pattern fully emerged. Today, we live long enough to see the structure beneath the surface. Aging reveals design, not just damage. It shows us what the human body was asked to do and what it was never asked to become. Long old age stretches every system beyond its original question. Some answer well, others answer poorly, but all answer honestly. The body is not inconsistent, it is specific. It reflects a history of survival, not a promise of permanence. Aging allows us to read that history slowly, line by line, across time. What we see is not failure, but design continuing beyond expectation. That continuation defines the experience of aging. As different systems age at different speeds, the body begins to reveal a quiet hierarchy. Some functions are protected longer, while others are allowed to fade earlier. This hierarchy was not planned consciously. It emerged from repeated use and necessity. Systems that were used constantly in early human life were reinforced again and again. Systems that were used less often were left with thinner margins. Over time, this difference shapes how aging feels. Abilities that were essential for daily survival tend to persist. Abilities that were optional tend to weaken sooner. This is why walking, basic coordination, and simple perception often remain possible long into old age, while fine control, endurance, and precision decline earlier. The body protects what it cannot do without. It lets go of what it can manage around. This pattern can be seen clearly in movement. Large muscle groups that support standing and walking are used throughout life. They receive frequent signals to maintain strength. Smaller stabilizing muscles, which require deliberate use and attention, are more easily neglected. As a result, balance becomes less reliable even when basic movement remains intact. The body is not failing at movement. It is preserving the most necessary form of it. A similar hierarchy appears in circulation. Blood flow to essential organs is protected. Peripheral circulation becomes less flexible. The body ensures survival first, comfort second. In early human environments, this priority increased chances of staying alive under stress. In modern life, it appears as cold extremities, stiffness, or slower recovery. These changes feel personal, but they follow a consistent rule. The body invests where survival once demanded investment. The nervous system also reflects this hierarchy. Core functions such as awareness, basic memory, and habitual responses are deeply reinforced. They were used constantly in early life. More delicate processes such as rapid learning, complex multitasking, and sustained novelty require more energy and flexibility. These processes were less critical for survival. As energy becomes limited with age, the body supports what is familiar and reliable. Novelty becomes harder to maintain. Attention narrows. The mind feels slower not because it is broken, but because it is conserving. This conservation mirrors the body's physical strategy. Across systems, aging expresses the same principle. The body simplifies, it protects the foundation, and allows the upper layers to thin. This simplification is not random. It follows a logic shaped by history. Long old age makes that logic visible. We experience it as selective decline, but it is better understood as selective preservation. The body keeps what it believes it still needs. Everything else becomes optional. This explains why aging often feels uneven and unpredictable. Some abilities remain surprisingly strong, while others fade quickly. The pattern depends on how deeply each ability was embedded through repeated use and necessity. The body remembers what mattered most. It carries those functions forward as long as it can. In earlier times, life ended before this process became obvious. Today, we live long enough to notice the sorting. Aging reveals not only limits, but priorities. It shows us which parts of the human body were considered essential by the conditions that shaped it. What remains longest is not what we value most today, but what once kept us alive. Long old age turns this ancient hierarchy into lived experience. The body does not age evenly, because it was never built to support everything equally. It was built to survive. Aging simply continues that instruction, quietly and consistently, across time. When humans reach advanced old age, the body begins to reveal something it has always carried quietly inside. Not every system was built with the same expectation of time. Some parts were meant to last, others were meant to perform and then slowly give way. This difference was never obvious when life was short. It becomes visible only when life extends far beyond its original span. Aging does not unfold evenly because the body was never designed to age evenly. It unfolds according to priority. In early human history, survival depended on a small set of essential abilities. Moving through the environment, recognizing danger, remembering familiar paths, and responding quickly mattered more than refinement or comfort. Systems that supported these abilities were used constantly. Repetition strengthened them. Over generations, they became deeply embedded. Other systems, which improved quality rather than survival, were used less often. They remained lighter, less reinforced, and more vulnerable to time. As long life exposes this structure, we experience aging as selective change. Certain capacities fade while others remain stable. Endurance may weaken while basic strength persists. Flexibility may decline while simple movement continues. The mind may struggle with novelty while long-formed habits remain reliable. These changes feel personal, but they are patterned. They follow the depth of use that each system once had. The body preserves what was essential and releases what was optional. This process does not happen suddenly. It unfolds gradually as the body reorganizes around what it can trust. When resources become limited, the body becomes more selective. It does not try to maintain everything. It focuses on what allows daily function with the least risk. Familiar movements replace complex ones. Routine replaces exploration. Attention narrows to what feels manageable. This narrowing is not loss of control. It is control applied carefully. In early environments, this strategy increased survival. A body that relied on familiar actions was less likely to fail when conditions were harsh. In long old age, the same strategy shapes experience. Life feels smaller not because the body is broken, but because it has learnt its limits. It chooses not to exceed them unless necessary. Aging, seen this way, is not a collapse of ability. It is a sorting process. The body gradually sheds what it no longer has the margin to support. What remains is not weakness, but concentration. The body becomes focused on a narrower range of reliable functions. These functions carry it forward steadily, even as others fall away. Long old age allows this sorting to complete. Earlier generations rarely lived long enough to see it fully unfold. Today, we do. Aging shows us which parts of the human body were reinforced by survival and which were not. It reveals the architecture of our biology without drama. This understanding changes how decline is interpreted. What disappears first is not what mattered most to survival. What remains longest is not what modern life values most, but what ancient life demanded. The body does not resist this outcome. It follows it calmly, guided by patterns formed long ago. In the end, aging does not create imbalance. It reveals balance shaped by history. Each fading ability marks a boundary that was always there. Each remaining strength tells a story of repeated necessity. Long old age gives time for those stories to become clear. The body does not fail unevenly. It ages honestly according to the design it carries. When humans began to live longer than ever before, something unexpected happened. Longevity turned the human body into an experiment it was never designed to run. For most of history, the body existed within a narrow time frame. It developed, reproduced, and declined within limits that evolution understood. Modern longevity stretched those limits. The body did not receive new instructions. It simply continued operating under old rules for much longer than anticipated. This is why long old age feels unfamiliar, even unnatural at times. We are living inside a biological experiment without a blueprint. The body is discovering its own limits in real time. This experiment was not planned or gradual. It emerged quickly. In only a few generations, sanitation, medicine, nutrition, and safety extended human life far beyond historical norms. Evolution could not adjust at the same speed. The body remains largely the same as it was thousands of years ago, but the environment has changed dramatically. As a result, we are observing outcomes that were previously rare. Long-term wear, slow imbalance, and extended decline are no longer exceptions. They are common experiences. The body is not malfunctioning. It is responding to duration it never encountered before. In early human life, problems unfolded quickly or not at all. Injuries healed or ended life. Illness resolved or overwhelmed. There was little middle ground. Long old age introduced something new. Slow accumulation. Changes that once remained invisible now have time to grow. Minor imbalances become lasting conditions. Small adaptations become permanent states. The body adapts repeatedly without ever resetting. This layered adaptation creates complexity the body was never trained to manage. The experiment becomes clearer when we consider time itself. The body does not measure years. It responds to cycles, signals, and stress. When these repeat far beyond their original count, the body continues responding, but with diminishing precision. Repair works, but not indefinitely. Adaptation occurs, but without full reversal. Over decades, this produces patterns that feel confusing and unpredictable. The body is still functioning, but it is doing so under extended strain. Importantly, this experiment has no control group. We cannot compare modern longevity to an evolved alternative. There is no version of the human body that was selected specifically for 90 years of life. What we see instead is improvisation. Systems compensate, simplify, and retreat as needed. Some individuals adapt better than others due to early conditions, habits, and chance. Variation increases with age because the experiment is long and uneven. Long old age exposes questions evolution never answered. How long should repair continue? How much adaptation is too much? When should systems stop compensating? The body has no clear thresholds for these questions. It responds moment by moment. This is why aging feels like discovery rather than execution. We are uncovering what happens when a body designed for a shorter story is asked to keep going. Seen this way, aging is not a failure of biology. It is biology operating beyond its tested range. The human body is not breaking. It is revealing. It shows us where design ends and improvisation begins. Long life does not rewrite our biology. It illuminates it. We are not witnessing collapse. We are witnessing the long consequences of extension. The experiment continues quietly in every aging body, not to reach a conclusion, but to show us what was always there, waiting for time to expose it. As the experiment of long life continues, one consequence becomes increasingly clear. Time does not simply add more years to the body, it changes how the body experiences itself. In early human life, the body moved through time quickly. Growth, strength, and decline followed each other without long pauses. There was little space for reflection or adjustment. Modern longevity stretches this experience. The body now remains in each state far longer than it once did. This extended exposure alters perception, behavior, and internal balance. The body does not just age. It becomes aware of aging as a condition that lasts. This prolonged awareness creates a new kind of pressure. The body is required to manage itself across decades of gradual change. In early environments, change was abrupt. Either survival continued or it ended. Long old age introduces continuity. The body must carry damage, adaptation, and compensation forward without clear resolution. There is no reset. Each adjustment becomes part of the next stage. This layering of responses was never tested by evolution. The body improvises as best it can. Improvisation relies on habits rather than plans. The body repeats strategies that reduce risk. It simplifies movement. It stabilizes patterns. It avoids extremes. These choices help maintain function over time, but they also narrow experience. Over decades, this narrowing becomes noticeable. The body feels more cautious, less willing to explore. This is not psychological weakness. It is biological economy. The body is conserving itself across an unfamiliar duration. Another effect of extended time is accumulation without urgency. Problems no longer demand immediate resolution. They linger. Small imbalances remain present long enough to reshape systems. Slight stiffness becomes routine. Mild fatigue becomes expected. No. Because these changes are not immediately dangerous, the body adapts instead of resisting. Adaptation becomes the default response. Over long life, adaptation replaces correction. This shift explains why aging often feels ambiguous. The body is not clearly failing, yet it is not fully recovering either. It exists in between. Evolution prepared the body for clear outcomes, not for prolonged uncertainty. Long old age places the body in a sustained middle state. It continues functioning, but without the sharp clarity of youth or the finality of early death. Variation increases under these conditions. Different bodies adapt in different ways depending on early life, repeated stress, and chance. Aging becomes personal because the experiment is long enough for small differences to matter. There is no single trajectory. Each body reveals a unique response to duration. Seen this way, long old age is not a stage that was designed. It is a condition that emerged. The body meets it without instructions, using tools shaped for a shorter existence. What we observe as aging is the record of that meeting. The body is not executing a plan. It is responding continuously, moment by moment, across time it never expected to face. As the long experiment of extended life continues, the most striking outcome is not how much the body changes, but how patiently it adapts. The human body does not rebel against time. It adjusts to it, slowly and quietly. Each year adds not a new design, but another layer of response. The body carries its past forward, stacking adaptations one upon another. Over a long life, this layering becomes the dominant experience of aging. The body is no longer solving problems to move on. It is learning how to live with them. Close Linda. In early human history, problems demanded resolution. Hunger had to be answered. Injury had to heal or end life. Threat required immediate reaction. There was little room for prolonged compromise. Long old age changes this pattern completely. The body now faces conditions that neither resolve nor disappear. They persist. The body responds by settling rather than correcting. This settling is not surrender. It is strategy. When a condition cannot be removed, the body reorganizes around it. This reorganization affects how effort is spent. The body becomes selective. It chooses which demands are worth responding to and which can be tolerated. Energy is no longer distributed evenly. It is directed toward maintaining continuity rather than improvement. Movements become economical. Responses become restrained. The body seeks to avoid disruption. This behavior often feels like slowing down, but it is better understood as stabilization. The body is not trying to regain youth. It is trying to remain intact across unfamiliar duration. Over decades, this strategy reshapes identity. Aging is not only a physical process, it is a shift in how the body relates to time. Youth assumes recovery. Old age assumes persistence. The body no longer expects to return to an earlier state. It expects to carry its current state forward. This expectation changes posture, rhythm, and tolerance. The body becomes less reactive and more enduring. Importantly, this endurance does not come from strength alone. It comes from adaptation. The body learns where it can bend and where it cannot. It learns which sensations can be ignored and which require attention. This learning is gradual and often unconscious. It unfolds as part of living long enough for experience to accumulate. In early human life, such learning rarely completed. Now it does. Long old age allows us to witness something evolution rarely needed to consider: how a body behaves when continuation becomes the primary goal. The body does not optimize for performance. It optimizes for persistence. This shift explains why aging often feels quieter rather than dramatic. The body is not collapsing. It is settling into patterns that allow it to remain functional without exhausting itself. Seen this way, aging is not a breakdown of design. It is design extended beyond its tested limits. The body reveals how it copes when time no longer ends quickly. It shows us a form of intelligence that is not about speed or strength, but about survival across length. The human body was never designed for long old age, yet it finds ways to inhabit it. Aging becomes the record of those attempts, written slowly into movement, rhythm, and restraint. The experiment does not conclude. It continues, quietly, as the body learns how to exist in time it was never meant to reach. As the human body continues into long old age, it begins to reveal not only its limits, but its meaning. Aging does more than change how the body functions. It changes how existence itself is experienced. For most of human history, life moved quickly. Survival, reproduction, and decline followed each other with little space in between. Meaning came from action, continuity, and contribution to the group. Long old age alters this structure. It introduces extended time without clear biological purpose. The body continues, but its original evolutionary tasks have already been completed. This creates a quiet tension between continuation and purpose. The human body was never designed to answer questions of meaning. It was designed to keep going long enough for genes to pass on. When life extends beyond that goal, biology offers no guidance. The body continues to function, but it does not explain why. This gap is not a failure of the body. It is a boundary between biology and experience. Aging places humans on that boundary for a long time. As physical abilities narrow, attention often shifts inward. The body no longer demands constant action. Movement slows. Recovery takes longer. External urgency fades. In this space, awareness changes. The body becomes less about performance and more about presence. This shift was not selected by evolution, but it emerges naturally when survival pressure eases. Long old age creates conditions where reflection becomes possible, not because the body planned it, but because activity is reduced. In early human life, such reflection was rare. The environment demanded engagement. Danger, scarcity, and effort filled awareness. There was little room to observe existence itself. Modern longevity changes that. The body enters a prolonged phase where immediate survival is no longer the central concern. This does not mean the body is idle. It means the nature of experience changes. Time becomes something to inhabit rather than outrun. This shift can feel disorienting. The body continues without a clear biological directive. Many of the signals that once guided behavior grow quieter. Hunger is manageable. Safety is external. Reproduction is complete. The body no longer points clearly toward the next task. In this silence, questions arise that biology never needed to answer. Aging in this sense, is not just physical decline, it is an existential exposure. It reveals that the human body can persist beyond its evolutionary script. What remains is not instruction, but opportunity for interpretation. Culture, memory, and reflection begin to fill the space biology leaves open. Long old age therefore transforms the human experience. It separates survival from meaning. The body continues, but meaning must be constructed rather than inherited. This construction is not uniform. It varies by individual, culture, and circumstance. But the condition that allows it is biological extension. Seen this way, aging is not only about what the body loses, it is about what becomes possible when the body no longer dictates every moment. The human body was never designed to provide meaning in old age, but by extending life, it creates space where meaning can emerge. Long old age does not answer questions. It makes room for them. The body continues quietly, carrying life forward, while the human mind begins to ask what that continuation now represents. When the body enters long old age, meaning no longer comes from what must be done, but from what remains. For much of life, purpose is supplied by necessity. The body needs food, movement, protection, and reproduction. These needs organize time and attention. They give direction without asking questions. As those needs gradually fade or stabilize, the structure they provided loosens. The body continues, but the urgency that once guided it becomes quiet. This quiet is unfamiliar. It can feel empty at first. Yet it is not absence. It is openness, created by duration. In earlier human lives, this openness was rare. Time was short. Survival filled awareness. The body moved from one demand to the next with little pause. Meaning was embedded in action itself. Long old age changes this. The body remains present without constant instruction. It breathes, moves, rests, and repeats, without a clear external goal. This creates a space where experience becomes more noticeable. Sensations linger, memories surface. Attention turns inward not by choice, but by circumstance. This inward turn is not weakness. It is a shift in orientation. When the body no longer needs to chase survival, it begins to observe itself existing. The rhythm of life slows enough to be felt. Days stretch. Moments are less crowded by urgency. In this space, reflection emerges naturally. The body did not evolve to support reflection, but it allows it when conditions change. Long old age creates those conditions. Meaning in this stage does not arrive as instruction. It forms through interpretation. People look back, connect events, and assign coherence to experience. This process is not uniform. It depends on memory, culture, and personal history. The body does not direct it. The body simply sustains presence long enough for it to occur. Aging becomes a bridge between biology and narrative. Life is no longer only lived forward. It is also understood backward. This backward understanding reshapes how the present is experienced. Small actions gain weight because they are no longer overshadowed by future demands. Attention becomes selective. The body chooses fewer engagements but experiences them more fully. This selectivity is not loss. It is focus shaped by limited energy and long memory. The body learns to value continuity over expansion. Importantly, this process is not guaranteed. Long old age creates the possibility of meaning, not its certainty. Some experience confusion or disconnection instead. Biology does not ensure insight. It only provides time. What fills that time depends on context, support, and interpretation. Aging exposes this truth clearly. The body can continue without telling us what continuation is for. Seen this way, long old age is not a biological goal, but a human condition. The body carries life forward beyond its original script. In doing so, it hands responsibility to experience. Meaning becomes something that emerges between memory and presence, not something written into tissue. The human body was never designed to explain itself. It was designed to persist. Long life allows humans to ask what persistence means. Aging does not answer that question. It holds it open. The body continues quietly, providing time, while meaning forms slowly, shaped by reflection rather than necessity. Long old age does not complete the story. It gives space for the story to be understood. As long old age continues, meaning slowly shifts from being something inherited to something assembled. Earlier in life, purpose often arrives ready-made. Survival, work, family, and responsibility provide direction without reflection. The body moves through these structures naturally. In long old age, many of those structures weaken or fall away. What remains is time without instruction. The body continues to exist, but it no longer tells the person what must come next. This condition is unfamiliar in human history. For most of our past, life ended before such openness appeared. The body rarely reached a stage where it could continue without urgent tasks. Aster, Tesk. Modern longevity changes that. The body persists beyond obligation. It maintains life without prescribing its use. In this space, humans are left to interpret their own continuation. Interpretation does not arrive suddenly. It forms slowly through memory. Long old age allows experiences to be revisited repeatedly. Events that once passed quickly can now be examined from distance. The body becomes a container for memory rather than a tool for action. This shift is subtle but profound. Life is no longer only lived forward. It is reviewed, connected, and understood across time. This reflective process is not always comfortable. Memory brings clarity, but also regret and loss. The body does not filter these experiences. It simply provides the time in which they appear. Biology offers duration, not reassurance. Yet this exposure is part of what gives long old age its unique character. Meaning becomes layered, shaped by what has been lived rather than what must be done. As attention turns inward, values often simplify. The body can no longer support endless expansion. Energy is limited. Focus becomes selective. Relationships, moments, and sensations are chosen more carefully. This narrowing is not only physical, it is interpretive. Life is experienced less broadly but more deliberately. The body supports this shift by reducing urgency. Without constant biological demand, awareness settles. Importantly, this process does not imply wisdom by default. Long old age creates the possibility of understanding, not its guarantee. Some remain restless or confused. Others find coherence. The difference lies not in biology, but in context, support, and interpretation. The body sustains life long enough for meaning to form, but it does not shape the meaning itself. Seen from this perspective, aging completes a transition that evolution never planned. The body carries humans beyond survival into reflection. It does not explain existence. It simply makes extended existence possible. What fills that space is human, not biological. Long old age therefore represents a quiet handoff. Biology provides time, experience provides content, meaning emerges between memory and presence. The body remains steady but limited, while understanding slowly takes shape around it. Aging does not deliver answers. It offers duration in which answers may be considered. The human body was never designed to live long enough to ask what life means. Yet by extending life, it allows that question to arise. Long old age does not resolve the tension between biology and meaning. It reveals it. The body continues without explanation, and in that continuation, humans are given the rare condition of time without instruction. That condition defines the deepest experience of aging. At the far end of a long human life, the body enters a stage it was never designed to reach with clarity. This stage is not defined by new abilities or new goals. It is defined by continuation without instruction. The body remains present, breathing, moving, and responding, but the evolutionary script has already ended. Survival has been achieved. Reproduction is complete. The body now exists beyond its original purpose. This is where the final tension of long old age appears. In earlier human history, this tension was rare. Life ended before the question could fully form. The body declined quickly or succumbed to immediate causes. Modern longevity removes that ending. It leaves the body alive in a space where biology no longer directs meaning. The body continues, but it does not explain why it continues. This silence is not failure. It is absence of design. At this stage, the body becomes less about action and more about presence. Movement slows not only because of limitation, but because urgency has faded. The body no longer needs to prepare for what comes next. It adapts to what is already here. Time stretches. Days resemble each other. The body settles into routines that preserve energy and stability. This settling is often mistaken for decline, but it is also resolution. The body has stopped chasing outcomes. Resolution does not mean completion. It means acceptance of limits. The body no longer tries to be more than it is. It maintains what remains possible and releases what requires too much effort. This release is quiet. It does not announce itself. It happens gradually as the body aligns with its remaining capacity. In doing so, the body finds a form of balance that is different from youth. It is not flexible or expansive. It is steady. This steadiness is the final adaptation of long life. The body becomes a place rather than a tool. It holds experience instead of projecting toward the future. Sensations are fewer, but more familiar. Attention narrows, but deepens. The body no longer seeks to expand its world. It seeks to remain intact within it. Importantly, this stage was never shaped by evolution. There was no repeated pressure to refine it. What we observe is not design perfected, but design extended. The body is doing its best with rules meant for a shorter existence. That effort appears as calm, restraint, and reduction rather than growth. Long old age therefore reveals something fundamental. The human body can persist without direction, but it cannot provide purpose on its own. It carries life forward, but it does not define what that life means at this stage. Meaning must come from elsewhere, from memory, presence, or connection. Biology steps back, and experience steps forward. This handoff marks the beginning of the final arc of aging. The body remains, limited but stable, while meaning becomes entirely human. Long old age does not complete the body's story. It completes the separation between biology and interpretation. The body reaches the end of what it was designed to do, and then it stays. In that staying, it offers time without instruction. What is done with that time is no longer biological. It is chosen, quietly, within the boundaries the body has set. As the final stage of long old age unfolds, the body no longer negotiates with time. It accepts it. This acceptance is not resignation but alignment. The body aligns its effort with what remains possible, releasing the need to resist change. In earlier stages of life, resistance was useful. Strength resisted weakness. Repair resisted damage. Motion resisted stillness. In long old age, resistance becomes costly. The body learns that stability is preserved not by fighting time, but by moving with it. This movement with time reshapes daily life. The body simplifies its needs. It prefers familiar rhythms, familiar spaces, and familiar sensations. Novelty is not rejected, but it is approached cautiously. The body has learned that surprise carries risk. Quote, "This learning is not fear, it is calibration. Energy is precious, and it is spent carefully. The body chooses continuity over expansion not because it has failed, but because it understands its limits clearly. Understanding does not come from thought, it comes from repetition. The body has experienced enough cycles of effort and recovery to recognize what it can sustain. It no longer seeks to rebuild what has been lost. It seeks to maintain what remains. This shift marks the quiet wisdom of aging. The body stops asking how to return to youth. It asks how to remain present without collapse. Presence becomes the dominant quality of this stage. The body is not preparing for the future or repairing the past. It inhabits the moment with fewer demands. Sensations are slower, but they are also clearer. Pain is more noticeable, but so is calm. Movement is reduced, but awareness is steadier. The body becomes a steady environment rather than an active instrument. This steadiness allows something rare to appear. Time is no longer divided into goals and deadlines. It stretches into continuity. Days do not need to justify themselves. The body remains alive without explanation. This condition was never selected by evolution, yet it emerges naturally when life extends far enough. The body did not evolve to teach acceptance, but it arrives there through endurance. Importantly, this stage is not uniform. Some experience peace, others discomfort. Biology does not guarantee serenity. It only reduces urgency. What fills the reduced urgency depends on history, context, and support. The body provides time, not answers. Yet even without answers, the body continues to hold life steadily. Long old age, therefore, concludes not with a solution, but with a condition. The body stands at the edge of its design and remains there. It no longer promises improvement, it promises continuity. This promise is modest, but profound. It keeps life present long enough for meaning to be chosen, or simply felt. In this final phase, the human body completes its role. It has carried life beyond necessity, beyond function, and beyond instruction. What remains is not biological achievement, but human presence. The body stays, limited and quiet, offering time without direction. That offering is the final gift of long old age. It does not answer questions, it allows them to rest. It is in this resting space that the story of aging finally slows. Nothing more needs to be proven. The body has done what it could. It stays present, breathing, sensing, and existing quietly. Long old age does not demand answers. It offers silence, continuity, and time enough for life to simply be, without urgency or explanation or instruction remaining. At the end of a long human life, there is no final answer waiting. There is only continuation, quieter than before, slower, and more exposed. The body does not arrive at a destination. It arrives at a condition where effort has narrowed, where urgency has faded, and where time no longer demands proof. The body remains present without expectation. This was never part of its original design, yet it becomes the final form of its endurance. In this state, the body does not seek improvement. It does not measure itself against what it once was. It simply maintains what can be maintained. Breath follows breath. Sensation rises and fades. Days pass without needing to justify themselves. The body has completed every task evolution prepared it for. What remains is not function, but presence. This presence is fragile, but also honest. There are no illusions of control left. The body reveals itself exactly as it is, limited, aging, and still alive. It does not hide decline, nor does it dramatize it. It carries it quietly. Long old age strips life of excess instruction. It leaves behind the simple fact of being. In earlier stages of life, meaning was often borrowed from necessity. Work, survival, responsibility, and growth provided direction. In this final stage, those structures no longer apply. The body offers no guidance. It neither pushes forward nor pulls back. It remains. This remaining is not empty. It is open. What fills that openness is no longer biological. It is human. Memory, awareness, connection, and interpretation begin to shape experience more than physical ability. The body no longer leads. It supports. It holds life steady long enough for something else to emerge. This is the quiet handoff that long old age makes possible. Biology steps aside without ceremony. It leaves behind time, and nothing more. What that time becomes is not predetermined. For some, it becomes reflection. For others, rest. For others still, confusion or silence. The body does not choose, it simply allows. Long old age, therefore, does not complete a story. It removes the outline and leaves the page open. The body continues without instruction, without promise, and without urgency. It does not explain why life continues, it only ensures that it does. Seen this way, aging is not a decline toward nothing. It is a gradual clearing of structure. What remains is the simplest condition a human can experience, being alive without demand. This condition was never selected for, never optimized, and never guaranteed. It appears only because life has been extended far beyond its original frame. The human body was not designed to answer the question of what life means when survival no longer guides it. Yet by carrying life into this space, it allows that question to exist. Long old age does not resolve the question. It holds it gently, without forcing an answer. And perhaps that is the final truth of aging. Not that the body fails, but that it endures long enough to place meaning outside of biology. The body stays, time remains, and a question opens slowly and quietly, with no obligation to be answered.